Well, good afternoon, everybody. Nice to see you all. This is UK Mediation's Friday afternoon resolution roundtable. You're very welcome to join us this afternoon for the resolution roundtable. I'll just wait for people to appear. Everybody's just coming in. And here we go. So I'm Dr. Mike Talbot. I'm the founder of UK Mediation. And we've set this forum up for people to come along and to talk about casework, to come along and talk about mediation cases that you're working on or have worked on in the past or that you're just about to work on, actually. So in any sort of stage of development, if you've got a mediation case, might be a one-to-one, might be a team situation, multi-party situation, you're very welcome to be here this afternoon. We've got people from UK and overseas, all over the place. We've got people that we've trained, I notice. Hello to you. People we haven't trained, people who we correspond with and have done some work with as well. I can see. So you're all very welcome to join us. And I'm very pleased to have so many people here this afternoon. The idea of this is, in effect, it's a case supervision, some consultative support for your mediation practice. And I would just ask for a couple of rules, please. Number one, please don't identify who you're talking about. So don't use names, obviously. Maybe slightly less obviously. Don't talk about where they work. So please maybe even avoid saying, they work for a steel fabrication firm, or they work for a doctor's surgery, or they work for an NHS trust. Maybe avoid that as well. And any identifying factors. So anything in there that would lead other attendees today to identify who you're talking about or the situation you're talking about. You might even think, okay, supposing the two parties who are involved in that mediation are actually watching today, you don't want to give so much detail that they would know it's them you're talking about. Okay, so try and keep it very anonymous. And what we invite you to do is to talk about a case that you're either involved in, have been involved in, or are about to be involved in. Run it past us, get feedback from everybody else who's attending today, the resolution roundtable. Ask me a question. And let's see where we go. The idea is professional development, problem solving, becoming better mediators, all that kind of stuff. I like to see cameras on. If you're asking a question, you will see down the bottom of your screen, if you move your mouse or other device, you'll see a heart symbol with react. And just next to that, there's an up arrow, and you'll find a hand in there. So stick your hand up and we'll see it. My colleague Scott is on this afternoon as well. If I don't spot it, he will. And then it's your turn to speak, to ask a question, make a comment, chip something in regarding mediation cases. So stick your hand up and we'll come to you. And if you're putting your hand up, can you please definitely put your camera on? In fact, I'll be bossy and I'll say I'll only take your question if you've got your camera on. We're all about building interaction and interactional skills. So let's interact with our eyes as well as our ears. So now is the time for me to say, who has got something to bring? Who's got a case, a situation that you're working with, about to work with, have worked with, thinking about working with, and you'd like to run it past the rest of us, drop something in, maybe ask a question, get a bit of help. So this only works if you bring your case material. So I'll wait and see who wants to chip in. Who'd like to be first on today's resolution roundtable with talking about a case. And if nobody puts their hand up, then it's going to be a very short event because it's down to you to bring your stuff along and talk about your cases. So here we go. I've got just one or two. So we'll start with Dan, please. Let's hear from you, Dan. Don't forget to unmute. Thank you. Hi, Dan.
Hello, good morning. Good morning, all. So I suppose mine's it is generic, but it also happens. It happened at the most recent mediation I did. I am finding more and more increasingly I'm getting called into places and I'm mediating, but I think my job's being made a little bit more difficult by the fact that I'm often coming in as mediation is recommended at the end of a grievance process. And what I'd really like to do, I suppose, is the question is how do I feed back nicely to clients that it'd be really good next time if maybe we got a phone call a lot earlier, because actually all round better for the mediator, better for the parties, and better for the organisation. So I suppose the question is how do I delicately say that as
Okay.
a generic question, really?
Okay. Well, I'll give you my two penneth, Dan, and then maybe other people might have different ideas. And we have people from different countries on today as well, I noticed. So perhaps things are different where you come from. But my own two penneth is to do what you do, which is basically to say to people, it would be really nice if we could have got this situation sooner rather than later. Um, People chuck around figures to do with success of mediation, which the true and realistic figures are somewhere between 80 and 85% successful. That's supported by the data and believable. Anybody who tells you they're 99% successful, I think they're pulling your leg. So around about 4 out of 5 cases. Now, the 1 out of 5 cases that don't settle, the single most commonly encountered reason is that it was referred too late. So you got it too late, either after a grievance process, like you're describing, Dan, or after people have become cemented into their positions, and where it's been an evidential process, an investigation, maybe people who've been off on gardening leave even, but people have just got really entrenched, really cemented into their positions, and it's too late. And particularly with a grievance, which you, by the sound of it, Dan, and certainly we for the last 26 years, are saying to people, grievance should be a last resort, not a first resort. Get them talking first. And if you fail to get them talking, or if they don't want to talk, or if they don't want to volunteer for something like mediation, then you can consider more formal processes, including grievance. So, short answer, Dan, is we do what you do. Try and encourage referrers to get the referrals in early. We do training within organisations, and that's the headline of training for potential referrers for HR professionals, team leaders, managers, employee relations people. Refer to mediation early because you will miss the boat. So I'm pretty much saying carry on doing what you do. Anybody else got ideas about that? About when we get cases which are clearly it's a bit late, it's come as the result of an investigation or a grievance hearing, where one of the recommendations is, okay, now you've done all that, now do mediation. Vicky, hiya.
Hello, hi. Don't know,
Hey.
can you see me? Ah, right, okay. I think I'm quite lucky in that I work with a lot of HR professionals, and I always say to them, you can mediate the subjective, the he
Yeah.
said, she said.
Mm,
Um,
mm,
it's, you know, if it's a grievance and it's not been found, it's usually, people don't know the outcome of the grievance, and that people who raise a grievance actually tend to want the other party hung, drawn, and quartered, which is never going to be an outcome from a grievance. So, from HR's perspective, it's about the realistic outcome of a grievance. And, like you say, it's a he said, she said type, and you need to mediate first as opposed
yeah.
to after the grievance. If it's been done, if the grievance has happened and it's heard, and part of the outcome of the grievance is that they should go to mediation,
Mm,
and then that is usually brought up in the mediation. And the number of times the people actually want to know what the outcome was, because of course it's not shared with all parties,
mm.
which I discourage, because there's no need for it. It's not required. We are where we are, and we're moving on from today.
Yeah. Cool.
So that's my two pennyworth.
Very nice. Thank you very, very much, Vicky.
Yeah.
Cheers. And the other thing in our experience, and it's just happened quite recently, is that where there's been a grievance, then it comes to mediation. And then when they're in mediation, what the parties really want to do, because like you say, Vicky, the aggrieved party feels like they actually haven't had their pound of flesh. So what they want to do in mediation is they want to effectively try and rerun the grievance process, which of course we won't allow. So they feel like they haven't got what they wanted through the formal process. So they come into mediation and they're still banging that same drum, trying to get their pound of flesh, which, that's not what mediation is for, of course. I think it's gone on so long, and we know this, Dan and Vicky, you both know this, probably a lot of people on today know this. The grievance sets people against each other. And what we're trying to do in mediation is get people to put their heads together rather than bang them together, and to come up with a better way of structuring their working relationship. Whereas the grievance process is much more divisive. We're bringing in witnesses, we've got statements, uses up a whole load of management time, a whole load of HR time, but it's counterproductive entirely to the mediation process, which is about building collaboration rather than finding whether somebody's points of grievance are upheld by the evidence and statements that they gather. So refer early, referrers. I will wag my finger and say we need to get them early in order to bring about a greater success rate and preclude all that wasted time, really. So thanks for floating that one, Dan. Brilliant. It's a common thing. And like I say, in 26 years we've been doing this, probably the main reason that cases don't settle is it's come too late. So let's hear from somebody else. I imagine people have come along today with things they'd like to float. There's no such thing as a stupid question. It may be something that you think might be quite trivial or quite basic, but we'd still like to hear it. There are people of all sort of stages of development here, so it'd be brilliant. So I've got two now. So I've got Ina. Ina, can I see you, please? I'd love to have your camera on if you don't mind. Thank you very much. Then we can all...
Hi, everyone.
Okay, what you got, Ina?
I'm from Bulgaria, and I completely agree that the legislation is different, but I wanted to ask, how do you practically put at ease the people that are really untrusty about the confidentiality of the process, and if the other party is going to use somebody that it was found out during the mediation session?
Yeah.
How do you practically guarantee that this is not going to happen, and you don't know if it's going to happen?
Yeah, sure. Do you have a written confidentiality agreement for mediations?
Yes, we do, but still people are, at least in Bulgaria, really untrusty about that.
Yeah, okay. It's a good faith agreement, Ina, and it's very difficult to enforce. In our experience, if people breach the confidentiality agreement and they're within a workplace, within an employment setting, the employer can consider that to be a disciplinary issue. And they may discipline the party for, failing to follow what was agreed in the mediation. I've seen it happen a few times. It's not common. I've seen it a few times. But the fact of it being a good faith agreement means that it's very difficult to enforce. So if somebody wanted to make an agreement in mediation or to hear from their supposed adversary and then go and put it in the staff intranet, everything that they said, there would be very little consequence to that. And it's not a great deal we can do about it. So a good faith agreement, we have to have people volunteer for mediation. We have to know that they're there with the right intentions. And a kind of, if they're not, I think we might triage it out. We might actually filter out cases where it's, and it is sometimes evidently clear that what one party wants to do is just a fishing exercise, just to hear what the other one's got to say and then try and use that elsewhere. When in the UK, when it gets to employment tribunal, if the employment law judge is switched on, he or she won't allow things that have been deduced through the mediation.
Okay.
So if mediation failed and it went to employment tribunal or to court, the judge would hear something that had been mentioned in mediation, and he or she would stop that and say, no, that's not admissible, because it happened within the without prejudice environment of mediation, so it can't be used elsewhere. So we make sure people don't take notes in the mediation. I don't know if that's something that you do. There's no recording.
Yes.
We have to be doubly careful when we're doing it online, of course, because you don't know who's in the room, or you don't know if people have got their phones on record. But the agreement is only good faith, and it says it's without prejudice and confidential, can't be used elsewhere. But if people break that, it's very hard to enforce it.
Okay.
You're welcome. Did anybody want to chip in on that point? I've got two people waiting, Kate and Anthony. Vicky, was your comment about that, about the enforceability of confidentiality? Let's hear yours then, Vicky, and then we'll go to Kate and Anthony.
Well, I entirely agree in that. I did a mediation 2 weeks ago, and 2 days later, the girl emailed me and wanted to share this share all the information. I responded back to the commissioning officers because I didn't respond back to the party, and in fact, there's a disciplinary meeting at 2:00 this afternoon.
There you go.
Okay.
Enough said. Yeah. Okay. Thanks for that, Vicky. Right. Let's go to Kate. Hiya, Kate.
Yeah. Nice to chat with you. I trained with you not so long ago, so I'm still fairly early in my mediation journey. But I had a mediation I did a week before last, and I wasn't really sure what to do in the situation. I went ahead with my gut instinct. I've been working in HR for 25 years. So I hope this is the right thing to do. It ended positively in the end, so that was fine. In the individual meetings, so party two, this lady was very animated, which I've expected and experienced in HR throughout my career, but she was actually stomping around the large room we had and sort of imitating the person who I'd already seen. The other person wasn't there.
Yeah.
And this was obviously session two, so I was letting her get everything off her chest. So I let that carry on for a bit, and she calmed down and sat down. And then towards the end of the individual session, I said, obviously, if you're willing to go forward to the next stage, we're going to have you staying seated and calm. I wasn't sure whether I should have stopped her from stomping around in the first place or let her get it out of the system. So I was really just asking for some other people's opinions.
Okay, well, I'll tell you what, I won't go first this time. How's about that?
Okay.
So let's hear other people's opinion on that example from Kate. So one of the parties in their individual meeting without the other party present, and they're kind of mimicking their colleague, they're stomping around, mimicking their voice, Kate, and mimicking behave kind of thing. Yeah, okay, fine. Anybody's thoughts on that? What would you do about that, John?
Thanks, Mike. I kind of feel like, almost anything goes in that stuff, like effing and jeffing, and because if we kind of lance the boil at that point, there's a better chance of success further down the line, I'd say. That was my thought.
That was my gut, and that's what I did.
Yeah. I think I do the same, and I'm seeing thumbs up there from Anthony as well, who's going to speak next. But just for your point, Kate, that individual meeting. I mean, I might just say to her, as I imagine you did, but say to that individual is to say, when you walk around like that and mimic the other person, I'm thinking fine for now. And when you get to the joint meeting with the other person, what I'll say to both of you, so it will be equally applied to the two of you, is I'll probably ask you to stay in your seats and certainly not to imitate each other. And for now, it's fine.
Yeah.
Now, the reason I would do that is that I like to take any opportunity I can to reinforce my impartiality. So any opportunity you get to say, whatever this rule is or whatever this reference to your behavior is, I'm going to be doing it with the other guy as well.
Yeah.
So they get right from the outset that you do that. And I actually find it helps me as well to occupy that sort of impartial space a bit better. So I would kind of use that to my benefit as well as to the benefit of the process. But I would also say, is that one of your first cases since training, Kate?
Yes. Yeah.
Congratulations. Well done. To get a success early on when you start to go from the classroom into the real setting is brilliant. Yeah, that's really
I'm obviously quite nerve-wracking, but I've got another two booked in as well. So
have you?
I'm on a bit of a roll. Well, hopefully. No.
Great.
I shouldn't say that. They'll cancel, but fingers crossed.
Well, you're getting a virtual clap there from Ina, and you're getting an actual clap from Anthony, who we're going to go to next. So, Anthony, let's hear from you. Hiya.
Yeah, hi, thanks. So I just wanted to say to Kate that, one of the fundamental things we learn in mediation is that both the parties want a chance to tell their story and vent. And I think that, as long as they're not being, was this a virtual one or was it in person? Yeah.
It was in person, and it was in a really big room, so she could use all the space she wanted to.
Yeah, I'd say let her, as long as she's not, threatening, I'd say just let her get it out. That would be fine. So good. So I don't know if I want to tell my story here or if I just want to get some side sympathy for a case. I've been mediating for a long time, and I'm actually living just south of London right now, but I've got an active mediation business going in Denver, Colorado, which is where I used to live. And so we do a lot of family cases, and most of them settle. It's a fairly documented process in Colorado. We go through it. And I've got a couple right now that's just disappointing me. They violently dislike each other. The one of them said the other one had an affair, and the other one said the other one just walked out, and blah, 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 like that. And they've agreed on almost all the issues, except they cannot agree, and it sounds stupid, but they can't agree on how many overnights the dad is going to have with his 17-year-old kid for the year, and the significance of that is it goes into the, the child support calculation, the monthly payment. And the dad says it's 83 and the mum says it's 66, and this kid's 17 and he does as he pleases because he's got his own car. So it's a completely stupid argument. But the fact of the matter is they're both completely positional on this. I've tried every single thing I possibly can, and I've been doing this a long time. Spoken to the both of them individually. I've explained that the judge is probably just going to split the number down the middle and think they're both stupid. And Mike's looking at me. I don't know if you're allowed to do that in England, but in the States, we might privately, give our opinion about what a reasonable judge might do.
Yeah.
And I'm just completely stuck. So we've got our final meeting with these people tomorrow, and I've told them I do not want to discuss this issue again if they're not going to agree on it. I just want to go through and document all the rest of the agreements, because I want to send them away with a MOU and the court paperwork filled out, at least to the extent that they've got something professional, I think, to show the judge. But I'm just disappointed with myself that I cannot get them past this one issue, and it's just been bugging me.
It's bugging me now, Anthony. So yeah, I mean, it's the last thing. There's an expression for it, isn't there? When everything's agreed apart from that very last thing. And I had it years and years ago, and it was around a particular CD. It was a particular CD by a particular band, and there was a dividing up of the assets and the spoils, and we'd done the children's issues, and we'd done the property, and we'd done finances. And there was a particular CD which had a different significance to each member of the couple, and they were arguing about who should have it. What do we do? You've been doing this a long time, Anthony, by the sound of it. So you increase the size of the pool, buy another CD. We look at interest-based negotiation. We look at last resort. We look at compromise. Compromise is about cutting in half. And if you've been doing this a long time, you'd also know about BATNA, which just put it in there just for other people. I'm sure you know all about that. The best alternative to a negotiated agreement. And when you see them tomorrow, it's an either-or situation, isn't it? So either you come up with a number, but I'm not going to talk about it today. You're going to have to do that yourselves. Or the judge, he or she will slice down the middle, and you'll get the midpoint of what you're saying and what you're saying. Make a choice.
Yeah,
and
that's pretty much what I thought. But I appreciate you saying it too, because I feared that I was hoping that somebody would come up with some magic thing that I hadn't thought about, but I don't think it's there.
I ain't got one of those. No. It's about the self-determination. It's about if they wish to spend their energies and their patience having that argument, which is clearly not moving. You've done everything you can. You've set up the environment in which they could potentially have got a different outcome. But now it's about what's the best alternative to the fact that you can't agree on this. Judge is going to split the difference. It's either or. You either come up with a figure now, or judge will tell you what it's going to be. That's pretty well it.
Yeah. Thanks, mate.
Brilliant. Thank you. So you do, presumably you do 100% online, do you then, Anthony, in Denver?
We're doing all of it online, and I've been doing a lot of family cases, because in Colorado, all family cases are automatically sent to mediation.
Yeah.
I'm trying to expand the business with my partner who does live over there, that we do some more. So I've got an HOA, Homeowners Association, if you know what that is. I've got somebody calling me this afternoon about that. I did a protection order case the other day. So we're starting to get a stream of non-family cases. So just as a point of interest, when I did my initial mediation training, which was actually in California, we had the opportunity to go into the courtroom, into like small claims where there'd be a judge, and the judge would send everybody out to the back to talk to us in the corridor and see if we could come up with a quick agreement to settle the case and dismiss it. And so that was, I must have done 1,000 of those.
Wow.
And so I got pretty good solid trainings at that.
Excellent. Good for you, Anthony. Thank you very much for being here today. Thank you very much. Really interesting.
Yeah, thank you for having us.
Okay. Let's go to Samaya. Hiya.
Hello. My question was with regards, just as a follow-on from a previous question, when we were talking about confidentiality agreements. Had a situation a while back where one of the parties refused to sign a confidentiality agreement because he wanted to be able to speak to other parties, including his union rep. So I think my question is, what do we do in that situation where one party wants to sign or is happy to sign and another party refuses to sign? Would you go ahead with the mediation?
Not at all. No, you don't get over the threshold if you don't sign the confidentiality agreement. Sorry, mate. And if their wish is to get advice prior to the mediation, they're perfectly entitled to do that. But what they can't do is go spilling the beans after they have heard things from the other party within the confidential and without prejudice setting of mediation. But the only way you get over the threshold is to sign that agreement.
Yeah, so you'd be comfortable in kind of just stopping at that point and saying we won't be going any further until you sign that agreement.
Yeah, okay. Exactly. What we do also like to do, Samaya, maybe you do the same, is we, when the referrer comes to us with a case, they get some literature off us to give to the parties about what to expect in mediation. We also send a template for the confidentiality agreement, because when it's within an organisation, in effect, you're making a three-way agreement between the mediation provider, the parties, and the referrer. So we kind of think about it in that sort of triangle arrangement. So we show the referrer the confidentiality form and say, here's what the parties will be expected to sign on the day. And we suggest you show that to the parties. So they should have seen it before they get in. So it's not as if, what's this? What are you asking me to sign? So they know what it is beforehand. And they would have, if they want to, speak to their union rep prior to the mediation day. But like I say, if they're expecting to go out and spill the beans to the union rep at lunchtime or whatever, then there's no way. And I'll give you an example. It was a very hot day and it was in a porter cabin and it was in the grounds of an organisation. And they put us out in this porter cabin outside, like a static caravan thing, to do the mediation. Fine. And then we went, we did what we had to do. And then there was a tea break and the parties went outside. I said, get some fresh air, walk around the block, grab a drink. And one of the parties went outside, I think not realising that the window was open on this porter cabin because it was a very warm day. And there they were on the phone to their partner, giving verbatim the account of what the other one had just said. So they came back in. I said, I'd heard that. I couldn't unhear it. We quit. And that's the end of the mediation. So all we're doing is providing an opportunity as mediators. Now, if the parties don't want to take it, and if they don't want to avail of that golden opportunity to resolve their dispute without having to go formal, that's their business. And in this case, the individual clearly, by their actions, had indicated that they didn't want to do it this way because they'd just gone ahead and straight away just blatantly and obviously broken the rules.
Yeah, I'm preempting this because I have a case coming up with a trade union rep as one of the parties, and I think this person is possibly going to be quite challenging. So I think I will send that. It's good to know.
Okay. Thanks, Samaya. Thanks very much for that. Great. This is all good stuff. I'm enjoying what we're doing today. So, Edward, let's hear from you, please.
Just to follow up to what you've just been saying, in one of the individual sessions, I'm not sure we don't our policy we don't have a policy of a written confidentiality agreement. However, we did talk about it before the individual session, and after that session, I heard, because this person had been involved with discussions with their union, that they had been advised not to go ahead with mediation, so we just cancelled it. But I'm thinking that maybe the confidentiality, I was thinking before it applied to the joint session, but it really applies to the individual session as well. So what we discuss in the individual session is not for that person to talk elsewhere. Is that the way you look at it?
Not quite, Edward, if I'm understanding correctly. So when in the individual meeting, so party one comes along and tells you in an hour and a quarter, their side of the story. So it's only their words and their thoughts and feelings. So they're not hearing anything else about the other party or from the other party. So really, if they then choose to repeat their account of the dispute and recant their thoughts and feelings about it, that's fine, really. They're not breaching any confidentiality. So
the other aspect was that right from the start, that person said, I would like the union rep to be in the joint session. And we said no to that. So it was always an issue that if they couldn't have somebody on their side, And again, the other person was always referring to what their managers were saying as a manager of the other person. Yeah. So that was kind of a bit of a red rag to a bull. There was something there that we didn't quite work through that meant that union rep had to be there, so therefore it wasn't going to happen. So it's just a question of it's more than just confidentiality. It's a question of what to do if, you know, presumably they didn't fully trust that the mediation in itself would be what they really wanted or what would be enough. So so we just had to sort of drop it at that point because that person didn't want to proceed.
Yeah.
But it did seem that they wanted somebody else to know everything about everything, and it wouldn't have worked to go into something without a really, really strong confidentiality, because the moment they get out of it, the union would want to know what happened. So, you know, it's quite difficult.
It's the wrong process. It's not what they need. They need something else. It sounds like they need something more. I would, you know, say grievance process, but I've just 10 minutes ago said grievance process is a last resort. What I would say is, I can give you an example, and it's within one of the emergency services. And what they wanted to do was to reduce the number of formal grievances. And within this particular division of the emergency services, they had an astronomical level of grievances. So they said, okay, we won't allow people, we still have to keep it voluntary-ish, but we won't allow people to get into the stage 2 of the grievance. Stage 1 is just hearing about what the nature of the grievance is. 2 is when you start to take statements, etc. We won't let people get to the stage 2 unless they have been through one of 2 processes. And I'm just doing that because it was kind of a flow diagram with a Y in it, and you either go this way or that way. That way was mediation, and it's confidential without prejudice, etc. And it's about the relationship between the 2 parties. So this would be whether there are issues of conduct, communication, management style, fallouts, victimization, allegations of bullying, all the stuff we know about. The second route that you must try, if you're not going to try mediation, was what they call joint problem solving. This is where it's a chaired meeting with the individual, his or her union rep, and then somebody from the organization, employee relations or HR. You could consider it to be a protected conversation. You could do it that way, meaning that it's without prejudice, confidential. But it's a structured chaired meeting where we look at what the problem is. And if the union reps are involved or are insisting to be involved, or the party is insisting that they be involved, that's the place to do it, in the joint problem solving meeting. And in that instance, it would be more about terms and conditions, shift patterns. There was some issues to do with uniforms and ranks and grades and vehicles, and very practical things that are not about the relationship. And it was a problem that needed to be solved. So in short, in the case that you described there, Edward, very nicely, very clearly, I think it's not mediation that's needed, but something akin to this joint problem solving approach by the sound of it.
Thanks.
Okay, sure. Let's go to Marie.
Hiya, my internet has been playing up all morning, so let me know if I drop out and I'll put it in the chat. And maybe turn my camera off if it's bad for you. Are you hearing me okay? Yeah, okay, cool. So I've got one thing just has come up as I've been hearing the stuff about confidentiality, and then I have got a second, the actual question that I was originally going to be asking. The one in terms of confidentiality, I guess I wondered how people manage the need for people to have emotional support and talk something through that's not about talking to somebody to then use it in another process, but is about having that support. Because I am very early on in sort of doing some restorative work, restorative circles, that is kind of akin, a lot of similarities with the mediation and what you're talking about. And we talk about confidentiality, and that's really important. But I am also conscious, I will say, the only person I'm going to be talking with this about is my supervisor. And then I'm left thinking, who are they going to talk this through with? Or, just get that emotional support, a partner, a friend, whatever. And I wondered how you get around that, or what's a good approach in that.
Good. It's a really important question. It's come up before. And I remember being asked years ago, and it was a particularly upsetting situation for someone. And she said, can I talk to my partner when I get home, given that I've signed the confidentiality? And we discussed it for a while and said, well, yes, so long as you bind him or her to the confidentiality. And it goes no further. So we would expect that you would ask him or her to, to do everything in those 5 paragraphs on the bullet points on the confidentiality agreement. And in that case, you can speak to them about it. And that seemed to work with everybody. And we said the same privileges available to the other side as well. Because I would agree, you need to take it somewhere, don't you? A therapist, well-known therapist years ago, talked about the monkeys on our shoulders, and that when we're offloading and having catharsis, we're in therapy or mediation or coaching or other forms, sort of helping professions, we're getting the monkeys off the shoulders, and the helping person tends to acquire all of these monkeys, and then you've got to take them somewhere. So I think supervision for the practitioner is, in my book, it's a given. We have to do it, and we have a confidentiality agreement with our supervisors or consultative supporters, and for the parties, if they need to go and offload and have their own catharsis about what's happened in the day, yes, I think it would be folly to try and ban them from doing so. But if you're going to take it elsewhere, please bind them to the confidentiality agreement as well.
Thanks, that's really helpful and feels kind of more human. So yeah, thank you. But the thing that I was the dilemma or the struggle that I'm kind of bringing today is I work in an organisation where we're doing stuff internally, and we've got a pool of facilitators, and I'm perhaps there's a referral that might come in. Somebody might speak to me about a situation. Could we do a restorative circle? And then I'm having to think about best match with facilitators. And sometimes it's who's available and what part of the service are they in, and kind of that sort of thing. But I'm also sort of thinking about gender and ethnicity and perhaps other things. And I just wondered, as I said, we're at the really early stages of this, and it's just come up with a situation that I'm dealing with right at the moment. And I'm not quite sure how I'm going to make the decision. I just wondered whether there are any words of wisdom of kind of things to consider, or how best to approach that.
Okay. What's your particular question about that, Marie? Sorry.
So it's about how you decide if, like, I'm the person that's going to have to think about which facilitator or mediator, to use that language, is the best fit. Gotcha. For a situation or people. And I wondered what sort of things you or others might think I need to be thinking about in that.
Okay, good.
Does that make sense?
It does indeed, yeah. So we would like to have a pool of practitioners, any provider, you included, Marie, a pool of practitioners who reflect the identities of the pool of service users that you're going to be working with, whether it be in RJ circles or mediation or any other of the helping professions, I suppose we would say. We'd like that. But where we draw the line is people selecting who they have. I want that one. Or because I have this identity of my ethnic origin, sexuality, gender, etc. I want that person who matches me. We don't have that. And I think, to have well-trained, proficient, well-supported practitioners, it shouldn't really matter who you get. But I would make an exception in some cases. And where we've had, I'll give you an example, which hopefully might help, where we've had mediations where there have been allegations of sexual harassment or sexual discrimination between 2 parties, and they want to mediate it. I think it feels wrong just to have one man there in the room when you've got a male and female participant. So what we do then is we double up, and we'd have co-mediators, male and female. So there's some sense that there's someone there for everybody, somebody there who can identify with the issues. We can, through our training and our experience, as I imagine your people can, have empathy for every situation. and can empathise, but there's an element where the service users also want a note of identification, that I may have experienced some of this, or my female co-mediator may have experienced some of this. But like I say, I'm a little bit averse to people choosing their mediator, and we get legal practitioners come to us quite a lot, and the way they work in sort of lawyer-led deal-making type processes is they say, right, we've got this dispute, it's about boat building, have you got somebody with experience in boat building? We say, well, no, we haven't, but you don't need it. And they go, oh, okay, then. Well, send us 3 CVs then. Send us CVs of 3 of your mediators and we'll pick one. And they want photos on them as well. And we say, no, you're speaking to the wrong company. Sorry, go and talk to someone else. Because I think that doesn't work for us, really. Is that helpful in some way?
Yeah. I mean, it's complicated by the fact that the participants may know the facilitators.
That's awkward, yeah.
All internal, and just how much to kind of consider that and consider power dynamics and things like that, and whether more, not so much from the facilitator's point of view, but more from the the person who's agreeing to the restorative process, of how they might feel. But that is helpful. Thank you.
Thank you, Marie, for that. This is very interesting, and adds another sort of another flavour to this afternoon as well. So, from a restorative justice point of view, it's a lot of people on today probably know what that's about. But it's a very interesting application of a lot of mediation skills are there within the restorative justice process. Arguably, the practitioner isn't fully impartial, because quite often you're dealing with somebody who is known to have committed an offence and somebody who is known to have been victimised by that offence. So you tend to have a victim-offender situation. Not quite that straightforward, but...
Yeah, and the way we're doing it is we've more applied it to where it's a little bit more, under debate. So it's not in a justice system, although I know that's where it's come from. And we're we have got them in our youth justice, but we're also sort of applying some of those ideas where it's a bit less straightforward.
Okay, I'm hearing there's layers to this that we've not got into really. There's a lot more complexity, so maybe I'm simplifying.
That's okay.
Thanks a lot, Marie.
I
think we've probably got time to squeeze one more. So have we one more thing? It'd be really good to hear from just one more person just before we wrap up for today. That time has flown by. We've been here for 42 minutes apparently. I have a message from Anthony who wants an email address to get in touch. Yes, of course you can. We'll get that off to you. Anybody else like to chip in? Anything you want to ask or volunteer for today? Let's have you as the last one then, Vicky.
Keep coming back. And it's really an observation, and I wonder if everybody else is observing the same thing. In the last certainly after COVID, I think a lot of the mediations I've done have been with parties that are really quite unwell. In that, my background is from a health and wellbeing and counselling service. And although I'm not a counsellor, I'm not qualified in any of the well-being, you can tell when people have, they're seriously not well. I've done a mediation where I stopped the mediation because this lady had told me very clearly how she would commit suicide. She told me the tablets that she'd got and where she got them from and everything like that. Now, obviously, I was able to refer her to, proper support. Yeah. But my experience is that people are either far more further over on a spectrum than they have been. And some people, although they are obviously on a spectrum, and I say that being unqualified, they don't recognise they're on a spectrum. And yet their behaviours are very, very challenging and very difficult. I was wondering if everybody else found the same.
Okay, here's one where if I started in this groove, I'd be here till about 4 o'clock, because I'm very interested in neurodiversity and conflict and mediation. But anybody else want to chip in? Is it your experience as well people who are on today, that we seem to be less well since COVID. There is, I mean, the figures would show there is a much higher incidence of anxiety and depression, particularly amongst certain age groups, since COVID, whether there's any connection with it having been COVID or whether it's just the passage of time. But do we think that people are less well these days in terms of those sort of chronic mental health conditions, anxiety, depression, etc.? And or when Vicky says spectrum, do you mean the autistic spectrum, Vicky, or you just mean the general, the autistic spectrum? Yeah. Okay. Sam, can we hear from you, please?
Yeah, I'm sorry, I can't turn my camera on. I'm having real technical problems this morning, so I've been
we forgive you. We forgive you.
Thank you. First of all, thank you so much for today. It's been amazing. It's been really, really helpful for me as a fairly inexperienced mediator. So I don't have a lot to offer from the mediation side, but we've been doing a lot of work around with our occupational health providers around resilience in general, which we are seeing is creating situations where people are having to, or feeling that they're having to resolve things through channels like mediation, through grievances, where we would have probably expected in the past that they would have just had a conversation or been able to cope with those slight disagreements or niggles in the workplace, which are now escalating. So we're trying to do a lot of work, and with our managers in particularly around the current culture, and that people expect everything to be perfect, and when it's not perfect they can struggle. And it's not just neurodiversity or people with sort of established mental health problems, it's across the board, and potentially from people that you wouldn't necessarily have expected in the past either. So people that have been in the workplace for a long time, that resilience is just so low across the board that people either can't cope, it's causing issues where there wouldn't have been issues before. So I think there's a lot. It goes to your first point, the first point that I heard, which was nipping these things in the bud and having human conversations around, look, this isn't ideal, we can agree to disagree, we might not be on the same page with everything, but this is what we've got in common. And establishing those common goals, those common where people are, where they do have connection, and trying to use that as a basis. But I just echo everybody's struggles around some of the behaviours that we see that are challenging.
Sure thing. Yeah. Okay. And I think there seems to be a gradually emerging trend within organisations in particular, where there's a little bit of, and I don't mean this dismissively, people are in difficult predicaments when they find themselves in conflict. There's a little bit of a child-parent dynamic sometimes where people will go to HR and say, my colleague said this, my colleague said that, and it's upset me. Or they did this, did that, it's upset me. More so than previously. That seems to happen a lot more. And they expect the HR person in the dramatic role of parent to come down and wag their finger and sort that person out. We see that more and more. But I'll just say two things, so I don't want to steal your time, everybody. So we've just got a couple of minutes. If you're ever concerned about somebody's well-being or resilience, to take part in mediation, if it's within an organisation, you are entitled to go back to the referrer and say, I have concerns about this person's resilience, having met them once, or I'm concerned of their capacity to take part in mediation. And I would suggest that even ask or insist that they have an assessment. Now, organisations, if they hear that from you, they might actually be quite pleased to hear that, because what they don't want and what you don't want is to potentially make a situation worse. So if somebody doesn't demonstrate the resilience to go into what can be quite a tough process of mediation, and they come out the other end or don't even make it to the end, feeling worse, and then having absence or performance issues, or even making a claim, that's bad news for everybody. So if you have genuine concerns about somebody's resilience and or mental predicament, take it back to the referrer, suggest they have an occupational health assessment and or mental health assessment to make sure that they're up to it. And the same would apply as in the case that Vicky's bringing, if somebody said during the process that they have plans to take their own life, you know, we want to make sure that they get signposted and or referred to the correct support services. Because the very bottom line for what we do as mediators is, even I was saying about success rates earlier, about 4 out of 5, and the 1 out of 5, even if we can't make it better, I'm pretty sure that what we don't want to do is make it worse. Okay, and that will be, I think, my closing point for today. It's 10 to 1. So that has been wonderful. Thank you very, very much for attending, for making your points, for asking your questions, for contributing in such a lovely, diverse way as well. We've heard all sorts of things today, and for being so careful to preserve people's identities and confidentiality. That's been great. Thank you ever so much. We'll see you on a future webinar. Keep in touch. If you have a look on our website, there's all sorts of ways to do that. We've got all sorts of free resources as well, lots of films and other webinars and videos and presentations and illustrations of mediation cases. There's all sorts of stuff in there. You're never going to have time to watch it. All right, so that's all from us for today. Have a great weekend. See you on the next webinar. Thanks for attending. Cheers. Bye for now.